"Get out of my lobby, this place isn't for your kind." He said it loud, in front of everyone. What he didn't know was that the woman he just humiliated owned the entire hotel, and in exactly 9 minutes she would fire him and every last person who backed him. The marble floors of the Horizon Grand glistened beneath soft morning light. It was early, quiet. Just a few guests lingered in armchairs, sipping coffee, and a pair of staff behind the front desk chatting lowly. Then the glass doors slid open. She walked in without fanfare. No assistant, no entourage, no click of designer heels. Just clean sneakers, a black t-shirt and jeans that fit like they belonged to someone used to moving. Her hair was pulled back, her expression unreadable. Her name was Aisha Carter. The moment she stepped onto the lobby floor, the air changed. Not because she announced herself, but because no one expected her. Not here, not in this place. Behind the front desk, Gregory Vance stood straight, adjusting his tie like it made him more important. He was flanked by two younger staff, one with a nervous smile that never quite reached her eyes, the other already narrowing his gaze. They watched her come closer. No one said hello. Aisha reached the desk. Calm, measured, she waited. Gregory didn't move. Finally, she spoke. "Have a reservation, penthouse suite, Carter." Gregory's lips barely parted. "That's a premium booking," he said slowly. "Are you sure this is the right hotel?" She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She slid an ID across the counter along with a black card, clean, legitimate, silent proof. Gregory picked them up like they might stain his fingers. He examined the card, tilted it in the light, then looked back at her. His voice came low but sharp enough to cut. "This seems unusual." Aisha said nothing. One of the clerks leaned in. The young man with his arms crossed. "We've had fake cards before. People trying to game the system, you know how it is." The woman beside him smirked like she'd heard that line 100 times and still enjoyed it. Gregory placed the ID back on the counter but held on to the card, his fingers tapping it rhythmically. "What's the purpose of your stay?" he asked. Aisha raised one brow. "To stay." He frowned. "Have to wait while we verify the booking." There was no apology in his tone, no hospitality in his posture, just judgment disguised as protocol. From a leather chair in the far corner, a middle-aged woman glanced up from her phone, watched, waited. Aisha looked at Gregory, still calm, still unshaken. "Is there a problem?" He leaned in, voice lower now. "Look, miss, I don't want trouble, but this doesn't feel right." And then there it was, that sentence, that shift. The one that's not in the handbook but always in the air. "This doesn't feel right." Aisha reached into her pocket, took out her phone, opened it with a single tap, then without looking away from Gregory brought it to her ear. She whispered only 2 words. "It's happening." And somewhere, blocks away in a corporate office lit by LED and powered by precision, someone picked up. Systems flickered. Protocols came online. Gregory had no idea what had just been triggered. No clue the quiet he'd mistaken for submission was actually structure, patience, leverage. The front desk returned to silence, but the mood in the lobby had shifted. Slightly, subtly, a man in a navy jacket sipped his coffee slower. A bellhop paused mid-step, sensing something but unsure what. And Aisha Carter stood still, not moving, not blinking, but in full control. Somewhere near the concierge podium, a phone lifted. The tiny blue glow of a recording light blinked to life. Sophie Lin, travel blogger from San Francisco, wasn't even sure what made her hit record, just a feeling. A tension in the room that wasn't there 30 seconds ago. Across from her, Jacob Reed opened his live stream app, muttered, "We're live," and turned the camera toward the front desk. Voice dropped into a whisper meant for no one and everyone. "Something's happening." Back at the desk, Gregory Vance hadn't moved. The black card was still in his hand. His fingers drummed against it like it owed him answers. Aisha hadn't said another word. She didn't need to. Kevin Patel stepped closer now, eager in his posture, reaching for the card like he'd been given an assignment that finally made him matter. "I'll lock it," he said. No one asked why. No one questioned it. He opened the drawer behind the desk, revealing a brushed steel safe, slid the card inside, and slammed it shut with a loud metallic click. Aisha didn't blink. Gregory turned to his staff. "We've had scams before," he said, louder now, projecting for the lobby. "High-limit cards, fake names, they vanish when we verify, not today." Lauren Hayes, her smile now replaced by procedural sternness, pressed a button on the desk intercom. "Security. We have a potential fraudulent guest at the front desk, possibly attempting to access VIP accommodations under false credentials." In the corner, Sophie gasped. Did she just call security? Her voice barely above a whisper, but her camera didn't flinch. Elena Ruiz looked up from her terminal. She had stayed quiet until now, but her eyes were on the screen, and what she saw froze her breath. The name, the override tag, a full, valid reservation, penthouse suite. Carter Executive Tier, VIP. But she hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then curled slowly into fists beneath the desk. From his position, Gregory didn't notice, but Aisha did. Their eyes met. Elena said everything. Gregory turned back toward Aisha. "You people think flashing a card makes you someone," he said, loud enough that even the guests near the lobby entrance looked up. "But we've been fooled before, by people who look just like you." The sentence didn't hang. It dropped, hard, deliberate, not a mistake, not a slip, a statement. A woman sitting by the fireplace, older, gray hair neatly pinned, slowly lifted her phone, pressed record. No one spoke. No one needed to. Aisha looked down. The marble floor beneath her feet shone like ice. Cold, immaculate. She took a breath, and in that inhale came a memory, not distant, not faded, just buried. She was 16, waiting in a hotel lobby in Charlotte. Her parents were late. She wore her Sunday dress and new shoes. A clerk walked up, didn't ask her name, didn't ask if she needed help, just said, "This area is for guests only." She tried to explain. He didn't listen. They walked her out, like she didn't belong, like she was a problem just standing there. She remembered the way it felt to have a room full of strangers look away. Now she stood in another lobby, with another man trying to erase her before even knowing her name. But this time she wasn't 16, and she wasn't alone. Jacob's livestream hit 87 viewers. Sophie whispered, "We're posting this right now." The bellhop by the elevator glanced toward the front desk, then back at the camera. His eyes said more than his silence. Kevin stood taller, still proud. "We'll wait for bank verification," he announced, like it was protocol and not a performance. Gregory folded his arms, exhaled through his nose, then stared Aisha down. "Until then, you can wait over there, away from our real guests." Aisha didn't move, but something in the room did. The energy, the temperature, the direction. Across the polished floor, eyes were turning, phones were lifting, faces were narrowing, not in judgment but in realization. Someone said quietly, "I think they're making a mistake." No one knew who said it, but no one disagreed. The air inside the Horizon Grand lobby had thickened, not hot, not humid, just dense, like something unspoken was pressing against the walls waiting to burst. Conversations had stopped. Coffee cups paused midair. Phones hung slightly higher than before. Everyone knew what was happening, but no one had stepped in, not yet. Aisha stood where she had from the beginning, same place, same stance, calm, still, but the stillness now had a weight to it, a warning. She turned slightly toward the front desk. Her voice didn't rise, didn't crack. It stayed measured, as if reading a weather report. "Return my card." Kevin leaned forward, lips twisting into something smug. Smile that wasn't earned but borrowed from someone else's authority. "You don't get to demand things here," he said. "We're doing our job." Gregory didn't look up. He was checking something on the screen that didn't need checking, just pretending there was something to do besides answer for his choices. Aisha kept her eyes on Kevin. "I'm asking once." Kevin folded his arms. "Let me make it simple. You can either leave quietly or we'll involve security." Gregory glanced up, just enough to add to the chorus. "This isn't your space. You're disrupting service. You've made your point, now go." She didn't move, not even a blink. Lauren, emboldened by silence and proximity to power, stepped out from behind the desk. Her heels tapped against the marble like punctuation marks. She straightened her blazer, took a breath, then reached out and grabbed Aisha's wrist. That was the moment. Gasps rippled across the lobby like a dropped glass shattering on tile. A woman near the windows covered her mouth. A man near the elevators started recording without lowering his voice. "You're seeing this, everyone's seeing this." Aisha didn't yank her hand away. She didn't raise her voice. She just turned her head, slowly, deliberately, and looked Lauren directly in the eyes. "Let go." Lauren did, not from guilt, from instinct. And then, from the other side of the counter, a voice cracked the tension. "She's in the system." It was Elena. She had been watching the screen, hands trembling, cursor hovering over the reservation tab. Her voice wavered, but it came out anyway. "Carter, penthouse suite. Executive override, it's valid." Gregory's head snapped toward her. "What did you just say?" Elena froze, regret already rising in her throat. "I saw her name this morning. I remember because it was flagged, VIP level." Gregory took 2 steps toward her, low and sharp. "You don't speak unless spoken to, got it?" Elena opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Aisha finally raised her phone again, quietly, no theatrics. "Nia," she said into the line, "begin recording, log this moment, full audio, full visual, prepare code black." "Understood," came the voice on the other end. "Systems live, timestamp marked, proceed when ready." Kevin scoffed. "You think calling someone is gonna fix this? You still haven't proven anything." Aisha turned her head, just enough to meet his eyes. "This is your last chance." He blinked. "Or what?" "Or you make a decision you won't be able to undo." For a moment, Kevin hesitated, just a flicker. His confidence cracked, not shattered, but it was the first sign of recognition. The first hint that this wasn't what he thought it was. Gregory stepped back behind the desk, whispering something to Lauren. She nodded quickly. Elena looked at the screen again, then at Aisha, then down. Sophie zoomed in on Aisha's face. Her voice. Off camera, she's not here to argue, she's here to end it. Jacob's live stream crossed 200 viewers. In the middle of it all, Aisha lowered her phone slightly. The calm on her face was not passive, it was precise. Designed, learned, because she'd been here before, just never with this much power. Not until now. The lobby wasn't loud. It was tighter, like something just below the surface was about to snap. Phones were up, eyes locked in, breath held. No one knew what would happen next. They only knew it was coming. Aisha Carter took one small step forward, not rushed, not theatrical, just enough to close the space between her and the desk. Then she said it. This lobby belongs to me, not a shout, not a threat, just a fact, delivered like gravity, and the room responded the only way it could. It stopped. Every whisper died. Every movement froze. Even the soft hum of the air conditioning seemed to pause, as if the building itself needed a second to understand. Elena Ruiz, still behind her terminal, slowly stood. Her voice wasn't loud, but in that silence it cut through everything. She's telling the truth. Kevin's head snapped toward her. What? Elena didn't back down this time. Her name is in the system. Carter, penthouse suite. Executive override, owner-level clearance. I saw it this morning and flagged it as VIP. Gregory's face drained of color. That could have been a system error. Elena shook her head. It wasn't. Aisha lifted her phone again, calm as ever. Carla, she said, we're initiating audit protocol, lock their credentials. Gregory Vance, Lauren Hayes, Kevin Patel now. Carla's voice came through crisp, composed, understood, initiating credential lock. Processing now. A second later, a sharp tone echoed from behind the desk. Gregory's badge flashed red. So did Lauren's, then Kevin's. The sound wasn't loud, but it hit like thunder. Gregory reached for the scanner again. The red light stayed. Lauren pressed the touchscreen, access denied. Kevin took a step back. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't need to. Their silence was louder than any applause. Someone near the window whispered, she owns this place. Another replied, she owns all of it. Sophie's camera zoomed in, her voice cracking with adrenaline. She just flipped the whole thing. Jacob's live stream crossed 800 viewers. Gregory tried to speak. You can't, this isn't how this works. You can't just walk in and, Aisha cut in, not with volume, with certainty. I didn't just walk in. I walked in like every other guest. Quiet, alone, respectful. The only thing I didn't bring was the appearance you expected. Kevin tried to reset the lock panel. Nothing worked. Lauren whispered, oh my God, but no one answered her. Aisha turned toward the guests now, her voice rising slightly, not in anger, but in presence. How many times has someone been dismissed here for not looking the part? How many reservations canceled for imaginary reasons? How many people humiliated by policies that change depending on who's standing at this desk? Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Then a man near the concierge station, suit jacket slung over one arm, stepped forward. I stayed here last year, he said. They made my wife show a second form of ID. No one else did. I thought I imagined it. A young woman behind him nodded. I was told to wait 30 minutes for room cleaning while 3 men checked in before me. I never forgot that. Voices started to rise, not in chaos, but in clarity, in memory. Aisha turned back to Carla on the begin internal log. All complaints submitted to this location over the last 18 months, unresolved or dismissed, flag for audit. Carla replied immediately, understood, live trace activated. Gregory looked stunned, like someone had yanked the ground from under him. You tricked us, he said. You set us up. Aisha tilted her head. No, I gave you every chance to treat me like any other guest. That was the test, and you failed it, publicly. Kevin opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. A woman near the elevator clapped, just once. Then again, others followed, not wild, not performative, measured, purposeful, like justice had a rhythm and they had just remembered how to keep time. Sophie looked at her phone. It's already on Twitter, she said. Reddit too, thousands of views. Lauren's hands were shaking. Gregory tried one more time. There are procedures. You didn't follow the right process. You ambushed us. Aisha looked straight through him. You want a procedure? Here it is. She turned to Elena. Effective immediately, I'm promoting Elena Ruiz to acting general manager of this property. She was the only one who spoke the truth when it mattered. She'll handle the transition while we restructure this location from the ground up. Elena blinked. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Only a slow nod, and tears she didn't let fall. The crowd clapped again. Jacob's live stream passed 1,400, and still Aisha hadn't raised her voice once. She simply stood in her black t-shirt, in her jeans, in the exact space they tried to push her out of. Except now, no one was asking her to leave. They were all watching her lead. It started like a crack in the wall, small, almost invisible, but once it split, nothing could stop it. The lobby, once polished and controlled, now felt like a courtroom. Quiet jury gathering its courage. A man in a navy blazer stepped forward. Late 50s, tailored suit, hotel rewards pin still clipped to his lapel. "I've been staying here for years," he said, pointing directly at Gregory. "Last spring I submitted 2 written complaints, both about how I was treated during check-in. Both went unanswered. When I followed up, I was told no such complaints existed." He turned to the others. "I still have the emails. I was ignored." Intentionally, Gregory looked like he wanted to disappear behind the desk. He didn't speak. From the other side of the room, a woman with silver hair and a floral scarf raised her voice. "I was told my card was declined," she said. "It wasn't. They just didn't want to deal with me after I asked for help. When I insisted they try again, the tone changed." She paused, her hands shaking. "Said my voice was aggressive. I was just nervous. My voice trembles when I get anxious." Her voice trembled now too. "They told me to come back with someone else." Another voice, sharper now, a man by the staircase. "They made me wait outside with my service dog. Wouldn't let me sit in the lobby while my room was being cleaned. Said it was policy. But I watched another man, white, no dog, get invited to wait by the fireplace." The room was no longer watching Aisha. It was watching itself. Lauren had taken a step back, her face pale, her hands no longer steady. She looked at the growing circle of guests, the stories piling up like weights she couldn't hold anymore. Then it cracked. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said suddenly. Her voice was high, strained. "I didn't know it would go this far." No one responded. She swallowed, blinked hard, then said it. "Gregory told us to be selective, not in writing, but we knew. People who didn't fit the Horizon image, we were told to be extra thorough, extra cautious. He said we were protecting the brand." Silence, then a low, audible inhale from the crowd. Gregory spun toward her. "That's not true. That's not how I trained anyone." Lauren turned. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "You said we were the last line before someone embarrassed the hotel. You said first impressions mattered more than bookings. You told us to go with our gut." Gregory snapped. "That was policy." Aisha finally stepped forward again, still calm, still unreadable, but her presence now had a sharper edge. "Policy," she said, "doesn't tell you to smile while someone's being humiliated. Policy doesn't teach you to enjoy it." Lauren looked down. Aisha continued. "Policy doesn't whisper who belongs and who doesn't, but people do, and sometimes those people hide behind procedure to excuse their prejudice." The man in the navy blazer nodded. "Exactly. That's what it's always felt like, not just unfair, deliberate." Gregory looked around, realizing maybe for the first time that he had no allies left, no exit either. One guest lifted their phone higher and whispered, "They're saying it out loud now." Another murmured, "It's not just about today, it's about everything before this." Aisha turned to Alina. "You ever feel that pressure?" Alina hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." She said quietly, "There were guests I hesitated to welcome because I thought I'd be reprimanded later. I saw names in the system with override tags, and I still questioned them because I'd been trained to doubt." Aisha nodded once, "And yet you were the only one who chose to speak." Alina's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't break. Lauren, now fully cornered by truth, tried one last grasp. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, I thought it was normal." Aisha faced her fully now, quiet, measured. It was never normal. She looked across the lobby, sweeping the room with a glance that felt like a mirror held to every face. Normal is not the same as acceptable. Silence is not the same as safety. And complicity doesn't come with a receipt, but it always has a cost. Gregory let out a shaky breath. "This is a witch hunt." A woman near the doors said calmly, "No, this is what it looks like when the mask finally falls." Jacob's live stream had passed 2,000 viewers. Sophie whispered, "It's all being said now, out loud, no more hiding." And Aisha, she didn't move, because she didn't need to. The weight was shifting on its own. The reckoning had begun. The lobby was still full, but it no longer felt like a courtroom. The tension had cracked, softened, settled into something else. People stood closer now, not in defense but in solidarity. Phones were still out, but they weren't weaponized. They were witnesses, quiet ones. Aisha Carter remained at the center, still calm, still quiet. But something had shifted, not in her stance, not in her voice, but in the way the room looked at her now. Not with skepticism, not with pity, with recognition. She turned toward Alina Ruiz. The young concierge was still standing near the desk, her eyes still wide from everything that had unfolded, her hands now visibly shaking, but not from fear, from clarity, from the weight of knowing what comes next. Effective immediately, Aisha said, Elena Ruiz is promoted to acting general manager of this property. A beat passed, then clapping. Not scattered, not obligatory, intentional. Some guests nodded, a few even smiled. Aisha waited, then turned to the crowd, her voice steady but full. We will no longer apologize with form letters. We will not hide behind internal reviews. We will act. She gestured toward the front desk. As of today, Horizon Grand is launching a direct hotline for guest complaints, past and present. Our compliance team is opening an 18-month audit of this location. Any patterns uncovered will be addressed publicly. Elena blinked. 18 months? Aisha nodded. That's where it starts. A man near the water station, previously silent, quietly poured 2 cups and handed one to the woman beside him. She whispered a soft thank you and gripped the cup like something warm for the first time all day. Aisha continued, We're not resetting this lobby to erase what happened here. We're rebuilding it on top of it. A woman approached, holding the hand of a small child. Her voice was low, unsure. Is this place safe now? Aisha looked down at the girl, then back at the mother. Not yet, but it will be, because people like you asked that question. The mother nodded once. The girl held tighter to her hand. Across the lobby, a guest leaned over and helped another with her suitcase. Someone else pulled out a folding chair for an elderly woman still standing. And slowly, without being asked, the room began to move, not in panic, not in protest, but in rhythm. Small kindnesses, shared space. Elena returned to the terminal, her fingers steadier now. She opened a new interface, not the one she used before. A clean panel, fresh logins, no traces of the old access codes. Jacob turned his phone toward the screen and whispered to his viewers, They're not just cleaning house, they're rebuilding the foundation. Sophie posted one final caption, Real-time reform. From the inside out, Aisha stepped forward again, this time not to challenge but to invite. To every guest here who experienced mistreatment today or ever before, Horizon will be in contact. Not through PR channels, not through filters. You will be heard personally. Someone clapped again, then another. Until the lobby, for the first time that day, felt less like a place of judgment and more like the place it had always claimed to be. Aisha looked out over them all. This wasn't damage control, this was transformation, and it had just begun. 3 months later, the Horizon Grand didn't look different, but it felt different. The chandeliers still hung like crystal waterfalls, the marble still reflected the morning light, the velvet chairs still invited guests to sink into quiet luxury. But now silence didn't carry judgment, it carried welcome. Behind the front desk, a brass plaque had been mounted into the wall, simple, polished, engraved with 7 words, This space belongs to every guest. No exceptions. Guests paused when they saw it. Some took photos, others simply smiled. No one asked who had written it, they knew. Aisha Carter never ran from the fallout, she walked through it. After that day in the lobby, she didn't issue a statement, she issued a blueprint, Horizon Forward. A company-wide initiative that didn't hide behind slogans or apologies, it restructured everything. Complaint systems were overhauled. Employee recertifications became mandatory. Anonymous guest feedback was now tied to action, not metrics, not optics, outcomes. And across all 57 Horizon properties, portraits began to appear, not of Aisha, not of CEOs, but of employees who had stood for something. Elena Ruiz, now the permanent general manager of Horizon Grand. Not because she had power, but because she had used her voice when it cost the most. But the truth didn't stop there. An internal review exposed communications between Gregory Vance and a former regional director, Michael Turner, retired 3 months prior under quiet HR scrutiny. The audit uncovered what many suspected. Complaints dismissed without review, summaries rewritten, patterns ignored. Not out of error, out of comfort. Turner hadn't failed to act. He'd chosen not to, because the system worked for people like him. At the first Horizon Forward Summit, Aisha stood on stage. No podium, no teleprompter, just her, in the same black t-shirt. The same calm hospitality, she said, doesn't begin with a smile. It begins with respect you don't have to earn. The room stood silent. Then a ripple of applause rose, slow, heavy, honest. Later that day, Sophie Lynn took the mic. She hadn't asked to speak, but when they offered, she didn't say no. We didn't plan to expose anyone, she told the crowd. We just refused to put our phones down. She looked at Aisha and nodded. You taught us something bigger than policy. You showed us what accountability looks like in real time. Aisha didn't smile, she just listened. The way leaders do when they're still learning, because her story hadn't ended when she reclaimed her lobby. It had only begun. The woman once pushed to the sidewalk had turned around. Not to get revenge, but to open the door behind her and hold it there. For everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong, If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.